Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I'm your host Wally, and today we're going to be talking about all four of the starter champions. Plus, on an extra video, I'll be analyzing all four of the starter champions to see who is the best of the four starter champions in Raid Shadow Legends. But with that said, let's start off by talking about none other than the first of the four starters, and that is Elhain. So let's get in here and let's talk about Elhain, one of the high elf rare champions in the game and one of the four starters. So let's start off with her A1 ability. Keen Shot. Attack one enemy, place an extra hit if this attack is critical, meaning this can easily be a two-piece hitter on her A1. So yeah, make sure you want her crit rate to be 100% to get the extra hit. And then other than that, you have this damage is being calculated by attack. So of course you want to make sure her attack is well up. So this is actually some decent damage. So let's do her A2, Lightning Arrow. Attack one enemy, then all enemies. Has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Place a 30% increased crit rate buff on this champion for 3 turns if a target is killed. All right, so let's break down this skill, right? So first and foremost, if you're able to book out this skill, this A2 becomes a 4-turn cooldown. So if you're able to get the increased crit rate, you're going to have a 3 to 4 turn ratio, which is pretty nice, which means there's only 1 turn in difference before you can come back to the skill again, depending on where you're using Elhain within the game, right? So, and plus you're getting 20% more extra damage for booking the skill out. But let's start off here. So first, you're going to target one enemy. Then this attack becomes an AoE where you're attacking all the enemies. So the first hit, which is her single target hit, is going to be increased by 15%, which is going to be her crit rate here. So 15 plus 15, you already know that's 30% chance of committing a critical hit, which means on the first attack of this skill, you need about 70% of crit rate to max out to be 70. Because one, you're gonna add 70% to her crit rate, right? Which is gonna be 85%. Then the extra 15 will make it to 100. So, that's a little bit of math right there. If you're trying to, when you're getting her skills up and you're trying to get her crit rate stat up, you want to make sure you have the right amount of numbers to get there, especially with this skill in place. Overall, though, you want it to be 100% regardless of this skill. But if you're still like in the early parts of the game where it's a little bit tough to max out the crit rate early, then at best you want to measure it by getting 70%. Then this skill will give it the extra boost to give it 100 at that point in time of using her A2. But I will also say this too, if you're getting the second part, which is if you end up killing one of the enemies off of the waves or in arena or wherever you're using her in the game, then you get the 30% increase crit rate buff. So 15 plus 30, that's already 45, right? So at that point, you only really need 55% if you get the second part of her skill, if she kills an enemy from the potential wave. So that's very tricky depending on how you want to set her up overall, because there's 2 ways you can set her up. You can set up with either 55% and hope for the best, or you neither can set up for 70%. At the end of the damn day, it doesn't really matter. You really want to hit for 100% on this regardless across the board. But if you're struggling to get a potential set of crit rate numbers, those are the 2 numbers right there you want to remember: 70% and 55%. 70% for the one hitter, and then 55% for the AoE attack, for which hopefully you can knock off one of the enemies from that skill. So let's move on and go to the A3. The A3 is Valley of Death, where she attacks all enemies 2 times. And as you guys can see, all these books are going to go straight to damage, and it's a lovely 3-turn cooldown by itself, which is pretty nice. So, right, that's pretty much it. And she has an Aurora where it says increase ally HP in all battles by 15%, which means she's going to, if she's the leader of the battle, which is neither in campaign, arena, wherever she's being used, that she gives everybody an extra 15%. Now, just to guys let you know, what the Aurora technically does is when you're calculating the 15%, this is before you add any of the artifacts to your champion. So technically, you're scaling the 15% based upon their current HP that they already have. So whenever you're building your Elhain up in the game, you're scaling it by 50% of what your is, and then whatever the current HP is without gear. So keep that in mind overall. But what I do know is when you calculate her, when she's maxed calculated, that is approximately 16,526 from what I calculated amongst my own notes. But that is Elhain bread and butter, right? As far as this. So overall, how do you use Elhain when you're trying to set up in battle? In most cases, you're going to go with this A2 first, right? One, because it's 4 turns, and 2, you want to make sure you get back to this as soon as possible. Plus, if you're able to get the crit rate after nuking off one of the enemies on the other side of the battlefield, then of course having this increased crit rate for 3 turns wherever she's being used at is pretty nice in a battle overall, right? So it's pretty nice. The best thing I can tell you is when you're composing a team, you want to bring someone that brings increased attack because she's already have the increased crit rate on herself, and then even more so someone that can bring in increased crit damage if possible, right? More so than not, there's not a lot of champions early in the game that can bring increased crit damage, but if you're able to find someone, or even just increase crit rate, because 9% if you don't knock off one of the targets off the wave, then of course you're still gonna need that anyways, just to boost up and be able to make sure you're certified to do this damage anyways. So something to think about. Also, make sure that you do this against affinities that are equal, or in this case stronger than her. Like for instance, if she's able to attack someone with spirit affinity, then of course she's going to be better off with that because she's going to have a greater chance of landing the crit rate because she's stronger than spirit affinity. If she's facing someone that has force affinity, then that's going to be more weaker because force affinity downgrades magic affinity stats a little bit when it comes to damage. And then of course magic and void affinity, that's just neutral. So something for you to consider when you start this game if you're trying to figure out how the whole mechanic of this works. I will get into the affinity conversation of these videos later down the stretch, so don't worry, I'll break that down in a later video if you're brand new to the game and you don't really know how the affinity battles work. But that is Elhain from a nice simple strand of the ability. But like I said, first things first, yeah, you would do lightning arrow first, and then after that you go with the Valley of Death, and then of course you just spam the A1 piece by piece. That's how you would do this naturally, especially if you're in arena. Like if you're in arena, you do this first, then you do Valley of Death, and then you just naturally go with the A1 as you constantly keep cycling through the moves piece by piece throughout the whole thing, or wherever you're going. That's campaign, that's dungeons, arena, etc., etc. You always want to do that type of rotation because of that. Because like I said before, this is going to be, once you get this book down, that's going to be 4 turns. When you use this skill, that's going to be 3 turns. And then, of course, this is unlimited, so you're going to keep using it consistently. So, you know, that's how you want to use her skills overall in the breakdown. And that's pretty much it. But definitely one thing's for sure is Elhain is probably one of the best champions in the game as far as the 4-star champions that do a lot of damage. In comparison to a lot of the 4-star champions, she's really is one of those big hitters, which is why she's pretty much known in the game as a wave nuker because she can really handle the waves. But for sure, she has a lot of good necessity. Now, I will say this too, to a degree. Elhain really is really good in the game. She's gonna be more better, I would say, later down the stretch because the waves become really heavy later on, and the more you're able to get her out of lifesteal, which you're gonna need her to be in early in game, eventually then she'll be morely used as more of a control based type champion because you want to control the waves with stuns and or just applying pressure just so you make sure you're able to hold them down And then in other areas, you may want to use Hex, like aka Curse Set, if you're in need of it, because she has a couple of AoEs in both two skills, and then of course a single target skill. So things to consider. But with that said, so just to give it a little add on, I know most of you guys are gonna ask yourself, well, what gear should we place on Elhain to make her usable, to make her great and usable long term in the game at the beginning of the stages? You heard this before. If you haven't, if you're brand new, ultimately, then of course this will be your first time hearing this. But lifesteal gear, right? So when you're getting into the game, lifesteal gear is going to be the gear that's going to help you big time. You usually get some lifesteal gear towards the beginning of the game. It's going to be very dependable if you hopefully get some great ones, because there's some times where you won't get great lifesteal gear. Sadly, right now we're in the Alice Chase. So if you come into the game while in the Alice Chase, there's usually lifesteal, epic lifesteal gear that is given in the game early with Shaman, but because the lifesteal gear with Shaman is not activated because Alice is overshadowing it, you will get lifesteal gear from the Apprentice Path with Rector Draft in it, which is by star rank is is a little bit good, but the problem is the RNG of those stats, and I just hope and pray most of you guys do get good stacks on those. If not, you're gonna be tough. But let me tell you, so right now lifesteal gives a 4-piece set, so you need 2 more extra ones because there's naturally like 6 there's 6 spots altogether. So I would do lifesteal speed, a lifesteal if possible, lifesteal cruel, which is going to be, you get cruel set through Demon Lord when you're able to battle it enough, and if you're able to get it some decent sets from them, then of course I'll get, yeah, you do lifesteal cruel, lifesteal speed, and that's pretty much it right there. Lifesteal cruel and then lifesteal speed, those are the main 2. If you're able to get through Fire Knight, then I'll do lifesteal crit damage, or if you're able to do Ice Golem, lifesteal crit rate. Those are pretty much a couple of sets you can think about overall, and you can do those throughout the time frame until you're able to change out the lifesteal gear, because you got a new campaign farmer that can handle campaign for you, and Elhain doesn't have to do that no more. And then you can move her in other parts of the game where you can switch out her gear for other better gear like Savage, Cruel, and maybe some other things depending on if you need wave control. Then you can put her in stun and Cruel, etc, etc. So with that said, this is pretty much my little cover video for Elhain. I will probably make sure I do a better assessment breaking down what I'm saying in the comments, not in the comments, but in the description of this video, so you guys have a better time understand what I'm saying, because I'd be a little bit, offsetting with my talking points. But yeah, but this is Elhain in the broad scheme of things. Hope you guys like the video. Hope you guys tune in for more of the content. If anything, hey, look, hit that like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and thank you guys for watching the video. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.